Tochter aus Elysium.
Absolutely part of the family.
Thank you.
And they raise the vibration. All of the speakers that we have today, it's my experience, it's my impression that they're part of our Atlantean family, our law of one family. And Edgar Cayce stated that it was the law of one of Poseidon that had the highest vibration ever achieved on the planet, not the Lemurians. The law of one Poseidon's. And the reason why, and this is my belief, I don't believe the earth switched to duality until 109,000 years ago. I believe that, as Edgar Cayce said, we came here as godlings just experiencing the kingdoms, that it was a non-polarity earth. that had a firmament around it. Edgar Casey reading said that the first split into male and female was 107,000 years ago. To me, that triggered, that's when duality began. That's when the old firmament fell and Earth became a credentialed curriculum course called the University of Duality. And one of the teachers is a professor called Cause and Effect. And this is a doctor that makes house calls. In the University of Duality. So I'd like to welcome everyone for the evening session of the Equinox Arklantis gathering in September. We are very honored to have television personality, scholar, mythologist, incredibly intelligent writer and speaker with amazing insight. And William Henry is one of the people that I think is very, very genuine, a heart of gold, and carries that balance. There is not that celebrity ego or any of that can hold people back. He is a genuine person from the heart and one of the most amazing teachers of our time. Can we have an Earthkeeper round of applause for William Henry?
Thank you, Tim. Thank you so much.
Love you too.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. Good evening, everybody. I think I'm just relaxed. Thank you, everybody. Very, very kind. I really, really appreciate that so much. Lots to go over tonight, so let's just go ahead and dive in the deep end, shall we? Tim called me recently and said, well, we need to talk about your topic. And he said, I'm going to put you on a prophecy panel with John Hogue and John Van Auken and Laura Little. And I was like, wow, that's way over the top cool. One, because I love talking about prophecy. It's so important that we kind of see and read the signs of our times right now. But also it was a great opportunity personally for me to reconnect with a couple of really important and powerful gentlemen. John Hogue. Go back to 1998 with John. Seattle, Washington. Laura Lee's house. She had a wonderful radio show back in the late 90s. And she and her husband, Scott, were doing video presentations, and they invited me out to do an interview on my book, The Peacemaker and the Key of Life, which was about Nostradamus prophecies. And she was a friend with John Hogue, who, of course, is the penultimate Nostradamus scholar. So John and I get together on the radio with Laura Lee, and we have this incredible conversation about Nostradamus' King of Terror prophecy. Remember that one? July 1999, or September 1999, said Nostradamus, the King of Terror will come out of the sky and resurrect the King of Anglemois. And what does that mean? I mean, immediately the connotation was, okay, this is like an Antichrist type figure, the King of Terror. And the King of Anglemois, most certainly, people believe, was a reincarnation of Genghis Khan, the King of the Mongols, that this was going to be a resurrection of some warrior king. And that was a premise that a lot of people had. And my take, after hitting the books, was that the King of Terror was Jesus. And Laura was like, Jesus? It's like, where are you coming from? And I said, well, you go back to 717 AD, first telling of the Holy Grail story, a young Frenchman living in the wild part of France. I always like that part of the story. Claire and I take people to the Languedoc, Cathar country. It's pretty wild down there, but I don't know where the wild part of France is. And so this young Frenchman's in his kitchen, falls into a dream. A beautiful young man stands in front of him, blows in the young Frenchman's face, and increases his vision 100 times. And the young man realizes it's Jesus standing in front of him. And Jesus says, here's my book. The young man opens the book and it says, here commences the first telling of the Holy Grail. Here commences terror. Here commences miracles. I'm thinking, okay, they're trying to say something about Jesus and terror and miracles. What do they mean by this? Well, the answer for me came from going back to the book of Genesis, Jacob's ladder. The story when Jacob lays his head on a stone, falls into a dream, sees a ladder ascending into the heavens with angels ascending and descending on either side. He scales the ladder, gets up, sees El, the shining God, wakes up, says, terrible is this place. Terrible is this place. This is none other than the gate to God, and this is the gate to heaven. Terror originally meant awesome. Powerful is this place. So Nostradamus is saying Jesus is the king of awesome. And he's going to introduce an age of miracles. Well, that was my take anyway. July 1999, nothing happens. September 1999, nothing happens. But 2 years later, in September 2001, terror came out of the sky and leveled the Twin Towers, hit the Pentagon, crashed in Pennsylvania. Suddenly, our deck got reshuffled, didn't it? Here comes the Patriot Act. Here comes suddenly a new deal for all of us. Our rights are suddenly suspended. We still live under terror alert. You are aware of that, correct? This is a planet of terror run by terrorists in the new sense of the word. Not people that are interested in awesome miracles, but terror. So maybe there was something to that prophecy. While at Laura Lee's, that was my first introduction to the work of Andrew Collins, too, by the way. First saw his book, From Ashes of Angels, in her library, and that led to a long-term just admiration for Andrew. So let's give Andrew and John Hogue both a round of applause for all the work that they've contributed. John Van Auken, several years ago, 2015, Tib invited me to come out to the Earth Keepers event in Hot Springs, which was awesome for me, powerful. And I was talking about my new book, The Skingularity is Near, which is about how we're meshing our bodies with technology and entering into this new transhuman phase, artificial intelligence, and suddenly a new human is coming on the scene. And John Van Auken was in the audience, and he invited me over to the ARE to give a presentation on the Essenes. And if you ever get a chance to go to the ARE, I highly recommend that experience. And one of the reasons I'm so excited about tomorrow in the prophecy panel is to get a chance to interact with John more about the Essenes, because we share a real common bond there that has to do with our times today and prophecy. The Essenes, well, let me just put it this way. I'm Joseph of Arimathea. I'm not Joseph. I'm going to say I'm Joseph of Arimathea, play acting here, and I'm talking with Emperor Tiberius. Joseph of Arimathea, who is an Essene, says to Tiberius, I am the Jeff Bezos of my time. I am the wealthiest man alive. My little nephew over here is a star child. His name's Yeshua. He is the fulfillment of a multi-generation process where we've been cultivating young virgins to be a vessel, divine vessel, to hold this super high vibrational Christ being who is going to come into the earth to teach us a way to spiritualize our planet. Tiberius looks at him from beyond his glasses and says, there's no effing way that is going to happen. Because I am with the children of darkness. You call yourselves the children of light. We are the children of darkness, and we are presently incarnate in Roman soldiers and in the empire of Rome. That is not happening. And Joseph says, oh, but we have a long-term plan. This is the age of Pisces. We anticipate another couple of thousand years is going to go by before we see the ultimate fulfillment of our prophecy and our plan. And this is the time that we are living in as we turn the clock into the age of Aquarius, where we are fulfilling this long-term prophecy and plan of the Essenes to spiritualize our planet, to transform Earth into a planet of righteousness is the term that the Essenes used. And so tomorrow is going to be a wonderful opportunity for all of us to get together with the two Johns and the William in between and Laura to say, hey, this is what is really happening in our world right now. We've got to take a look back from space a bird's eye view of what is happening and the individual role that each of us play in the spiritualization of our world. And so these are the topics of my book, Rising. Well, it's risen, but they say rising in Nashville where I live. Rising. There's a lot of people that are resisting right now, but we're rising. We're all about ascension. And I'm hoping maybe we can get the color coding right on my imagery there. It's a little orange, kind of like, well, let's continue. So I've been working the past 5 years, hitting the books at the Vanderbilt University Divinity Library, going through PhD dissertations about the Essenes. The academics know an awful lot about this movement I've been describing here, the spiritualization of our planet, and how the Essenes were actually living with angels. Living with angels. They weren't having just close encounters of the first through the fourth kind. They were having close encounters of the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth kind, which is human transformation into a celestial being. And that was the promise of the Essene teaching, that we could perfect ourselves, in their words, and transform into angels. This is the purpose of our existence, according to the Essenes. And one of their teachings ends up in a prophecy in the book of Corinthians, where we are told, listen, I tell you a mystery, we will all be changed in a flash, in an instant. We will be transformed at the last trump. Now, after 9/11, we attacked Saddam Hussein. He wasn't having anything to do with it, but still, we attacked him. He believed he was the reincarnation of Nebuchadnezzar, the Old Testament biblical king. And he operated from the premise that he was a reincarnation of this biblical king who stole the Ark of the Covenant from Jerusalem and built Babylon. Well, Saddam comes along and says, W, I know who you are. You are Hullabu. That's Genghis Khan's grandson. And he points to W's father, George Bush Sr., and says, you are actually the reincarnation of Genghis Khan. Now, I don't know who Donald Trump is, but it is curious that his name pops up at this time, at this moment, where we are flash being transformed. Could be an important marker. It could mean absolutely nothing. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe 10 years from now, we'll know the answer. But when this prophecy is talking about the transformation in a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, they're referring to a term called transfiguration or metamorphosis, a sudden change, a change in form. And this transfiguration is what Jesus demonstrated with the Essene teachings when he took several disciples up to the top of a mountain, Mount Tabor, and transfigured into a being of light. He revealed himself not as a flesh and blood being, but as a being of radiant, luminous light. The disciples, of course, were terrified by what they saw because it was so awesome and powerful. And this is the promise, according to the scenes, of what all of us have the ability to do and indeed are called upon to do. We are in our pupal phase, our caterpillar bodies here. That's the butterfly. That's the butterfly. Putting on our bright white linen garment, symbolic of our light body, and opening up portals or gateways into other realms. During over 30 years, I've been researching these teachings about human metamorphosis or spiritual transformation into higher beings. And what I have found is that no matter where you look in the world, we have a 5,000-year-old timeline at least that we're operating on. For 5,000 years, beings have been coming and going from the stars, from other civilizations, and tweaking our DNA, moving us forward on the evolutionary pathway into a time when we will ultimately be celestial beings ourselves, equal to the angels, perfected light beings. That is the goal. And what I want to talk with you about this evening is the prophecies about that, as well as some of the ideas and inspirations and clues that I've picked up for how we actually do this. In my view, all of human history, all of it, is a quest for ascension. And it doesn't matter if you're in Sumerian traditions, Iraqi, Egyptian, India, Tibet, ancient America, they all have stories, techniques, legends about humans morphing into light beings. And they all assure us that is our purpose. If you're wandering around out here as a ship at the sea and you're looking for your North Star, that's north. That's north. What I mean by that is linking with any of these teachings, be it the Essene, the ancient Egyptian, or the Buddhist. These are my personal favorites. I'm always weaving back and forth between the three because I find them to be so abundantly available, accessible, and understandable. But there are many other traditions, many other doorways that you can enter into following this North Star of our transformation. Here's a very important key. This one comes from Tibetan Buddhism. The Buddhists teach that our human body was designed or tweaked to be dissolved into light, to accelerate the frequency of our body until it dissolves into rainbow-colored light, which they call the rainbow light body, leaving behind only hair, toe, and fingernails, which have no nerves to be transmuted. Now think about that when you get up in the morning and you're shaving or putting on your makeup, that this is actually some kind of a profound transformational apparatus. It's meant to be transfigured. And that is what is actually operating within us, is this light body. It's not something we go get, it's something that we already are. And what the Tibetans teach us is that there are beings, perfected light beings is the term that they use, especially in the Dead Sea Scrolls, the text of the Essenes, that are coming and going from, in our local neighborhood, 13 star systems, including our own, where this light body teaching is taught. Now, from my research and looking in the traditional texts, I've compiled a list of around 9 star systems, including Sol, our star, Sirius, Orion, Pleiades, Cygnus, Lyra, Vega, Arcturus, Ursa Major. That's 9. So the Tibetans are telling us there's at least 4 more in our local neighborhood of which our civilization is a member of a sort of a federation, if you will, of star systems where this teaching is taught. And in Tibetan iconography, they portray the light body in this form here. This is the Guru Rinpoche, Guru Padmasambhava. His name means lotus born. And he is in his rainbow light body. And what we see here is a collection of tools that he has in his hand, a resurrection stick. He has a crown of glory. He has golden rays coming off his body in addition to his rainbow light body, and he sits on a lotus throne. We're going to see these symbols reoccurring several times here as we continue this evening, but this is a way of starting to identify with this teaching. Because actually, this crown isn't something you can go down to Nordstrom and get the latest model of. You know, Armani isn't working on one of these right now, okay? Nor with the robe of light. These are psycho-spiritual symbols that can be activated from within us. The crown is obviously our crown chakra. The resurrection stick is our spinal cord system. The lotus throne we'll talk about, as well as the golden rays. And the idea that the Tibetans ask us to really get a lock on is that we have this quantum duality within us. Our body is both flesh and light at the same time. Just like light itself is both a wave and a particle. And we can fluctuate, go back and forth between those two aspects of ourselves. So just like light is not only a wave, our body also has this dualistic aspect. And so we have to begin to think of ourselves as a being of flesh and blood, but also as a being of light. And what the Tibetans had the ability to do, and what the Essenes also had the ability to do, was through their expanded consciousness, was fully control the photons and molecules of their bodies so they could phase back and forth between their celestial flesh, as they called it, and their earthly flesh. And when they're in their celestial flesh, this is how they could travel the cosmos. They didn't need hardware spaceships or anything like that. They used their light body as a vehicle to beam themselves through the cosmos, and then if they chose to, because they would choose to, in order to deliver the maximum amount of compassion, they would remanifest a physical flesh and blood body if they chose to. What we have forgotten is that this is our natural capability. We're still in our pupal phase. And we're looking up at the butterfly saying, you'll never get me up in one of those things. Because that's our culture. Our culture tells us to be weak, dumb, and stupid, right? And blind. You know, like Tommy, deaf, dumb, and blind kid, right? That's what they expect us to be. But we've got to open our consciousness and recognize that, oh, okay, there's something within me, this divine light being, that has actually manifested my physical body. And when I choose to, I can begin to connect with this aspect of myself. So Claire and I have gone to great lengths and great expense and time to collect. And sometimes we've had images donated to us by museums and dealers like Christie's and Bonhams who sell a lot of these images in private auctions that the public never sees. And so we try to root out, find the best images that we can that will illustrate this idea of our true selves, of our divine nature. And so in Tibetan art, you will find these images where you find these lamas and gurus in their rainbow light body, traveling through the stars, through the celestial realms, coming and going from all these various star systems. And that is the real normal world. You're all already familiar with this concept. If you've ever seen the movie The Wizard of Oz, remember, Dorothy falls into a dream, goes up to Oz. She suddenly sees this orb of light. As the orb of light approaches her, she sees that there's a humanoid figure within this orb. And from out of this orb manifests Glinda, the good witch, Dorothy's higher self. It's Dorothy's divine self that is manifested before her, her divine twin, as the Gnostics would call her. She wears her crown of wisdom, her crown of salvation. She's got her resurrection stick in her hand, and she wears her light body garment. She's attired just exactly like Padmasambhava. And she does exactly the same thing that Padmasambhava does, phasing back and forth between her celestial flesh and her earthly flesh. This is a comparison between Padmasambhava and the Mandelbrot set, the famous fractal image. It's actually a mathematical equation, and the idea is that no matter how many levels deep you go in what they call iterations of this pattern, it always produces exactly the same pattern. And I believe that we can apply this to the rainbow light body images, that this is our true self, this is our true body. When it says we're made in the image of God, this is the true image of ourselves, not this. That dirty old white man on the throne's got to go, right? God is, in this context, a more ethereal image of the rainbow light body. That's what Buddhism teaches anyway. And for Buddhists, the ultimate goal of all of us, the ultimate goal of all spiritual practice, is to awaken to our own true nature. And this is what I'm hoping to introduce you to this evening in part, is this is our true self according to these ascension teachings. Connecting with our rainbow light body automatically connects us with our true self. And this is the great promise of Christianity. In the twinkling of an eye, we will be changed at the last trump into what? The answer is we will be changed into a body, according to Christianity, that mirrors the body of Christ at his second coming. Now, when Christ comes back, I'm pretty sure he's not going to, or we're not all suddenly going to manifest or transform into a 5'10" Jewish guy that weighs 165 pounds and is an incredible bodybuilder. Because that's what we see on the Shroud of Turin. I'm pretty sure that when Christ comes back at the second coming, he's going to be in his glory body, his resurrection body, as it's termed in Christianity, which is the same as the rainbow light body. And when they're talking about us being changed in a twinkling of an eye into a body that mirrors that of Christ, we're talking about his resurrection body, his glory body. This was the point of the whole Essene manifestation, if you will, was to teach humans how to manifest their light bodies, their perfect angelic light bodies, how to transcend our physical limitations and reach into and become our cosmic selves. And this is why the images of the resurrected Jesus perfectly match the images of Padmasambhava. It's because this resurrection teaching doesn't belong to the Essenes. It doesn't belong to the Christians. It doesn't belong to the Egyptians or the Tibetans. It's cosmic. It belongs to the entire universe. And I believe they teach it in many more than just the 13 star systems we've been talking about. Here's the Gnostic Gospel of Philip. It says, "The Lord rose from the dead. He became as he was, but now his body was perfect. You know, people these days think you can go to LA, Beverly Hills, put down $100,000 and become perfect. Look at me. Ooh, you know, these weird looking faces. This is the perfect body. You know, I'm 5'4", I weigh 100 pounds, I wear a size 0, 36 double D. That's the perfect body in the American culture. Unattainable, except to a very tiny percentage of the people. But if you ask the Essenes what the perfect body is, this is what they're talking about, the perfect light body. And that word perfect, by the way, means to become more whole, to become more holy, and more compassionate. All of us can attain that perfection. All of us can become more whole, more compassionate. Agreed? Right. So Jesus possessed flesh, says Philip, but this was true flesh when he rose from the dead. Our flesh isn't true. Ours is only an image of the true, which means that this thing that we're walking around in isn't our true self. It's only an image of the true self, which is our resurrection body or glory body, our ascension body. And as Christianity teaches, because we are made in the perfect image of God, we, all of us, have the spiritual capacity to participate in or mirror Jesus' divine glory as image bearers and reactivate our light bodies. And the Bible is very specific. It says, as was the man of dust, we are made from the dust, according to Genesis, which is, we believe, a symbol for DNA. As was the man of DNA, so also are those of the dust. And as is the man of heaven, so also are those who are of heaven. Just as we have borne the image of the man of dust, our biological bodies, we shall also bear the image of the man of heaven. This is not a Christian teaching, although it is in a Christian book referred to as the New Testament. It is a universal teaching. And what we're going to be exploring here is that some people believe that this is going to happen spontaneously, in a flash, at the last trump, in the twinkling of an eye. We are suddenly going to find ourselves in our butterfly bodies, no longer in our caterpillar phase. I'm not sure if it's going to happen spontaneously or not. This is why I'm trying to get out here and talk with people to say, you might want to be aware of this because people think this is going to happen in the next few years. And I just imagine that if you're not quite prepared to go flash into one of these things, that you want to know a little bit about the in-between and what it's all about and who's done it before and where do you go once you are in your flashy body. How do we get there? Jesus is very specific. He gives explicit, very direct, very clear and concise directions on how to attain our ascension bodies. Here he is talking about perfection. He says, I tell you the truth, it's hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. The Essenes were communists. They're extremely wealthy. They buried over 100 tons of gold around the Temple of Solomon. It's still out there to be found. But they didn't have a need for gold. They had a need for spiritual gold. Again, I tell you, says Jesus, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. What Jesus is talking about is that we've got to phase out of our flesh, earthly flesh, and into our celestial flesh. And this is what Salvador Dali has so beautifully captured here in this image, where Jesus is phasing. Look at this kind of gaseous rainbow imagery coming off of him. He's not fully physical, nor is he fully in his rainbow light body. He's in between at the Last Supper. He's in process of making this happen. In this story, a rich man had asked Jesus, he says, Jesus, what's required for eternal life? How do I get this light body thing that you keep talking about? And Jesus said, follow the commandments. So here's the secret of eternal life. Follow the commandments. And the commandments are? Okay, we're talking about the secret of eternal life here, guys. It's, right? Love. With all your heart, with all your mind, and all your soul. This is the first and greatest commandment. The second one is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Did you know that Jesus was a quantum physicist? Because that's what he's teaching here. Love your neighbor as yourself because we're all entangled. We're all one thing here. What happens to me happens to you. It's the Mahayana Buddhist story of Indra's net. Whatever light comes through one jewel automatically goes through all the other jewels on Indra's net. We're all interconnected. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments. That's the secret of ascension right there. That is the secret of the light body in a sentence. But the rich man said, Jesus, come on, man, I've already done all that. You know, I've got $20. Will that get me through the gate? And this is where Jesus then delivers the punchline, our punchline. He says, if thou wilt be perfect, there's our magic word again, meaning whole, holy, and complete. Go and sell what you got. Get rid of it. Give it to the poor. That was another name for the Essenes. That's how the Essenes accumulated all their wealth. You know. The Essenes didn't have some guy up there on Saturday night giving a talk about human transformation into angels. They produced an angel standing right there. And who among us wouldn't sign over the deed to their house if an angel is standing right here and says, all you got to do is just, follow me. That's what the Dead Sea Scrolls are very emphatic about. And so then Jesus is saying, hey, your stuff isn't coming with you. So put it down. So if any of you have dragged any stuff into this room tonight, just take a moment and just put it down. That's what my wife Claire would say. Just put it down. Leave the bags outside the door. And then you'll have treasure in heaven and come follow me into these other 13 star systems and beyond. That's the promise of what they're talking about here. Meanwhile, we're going to transform the earth into a planet of light and love. It's not that we want to abandon this world. We want to transform it. We're not trying to go somewhere to escape this blank hole. We're trying to transform it. That's our goal, our mission. So ascension is really a state of being. It's a state of awareness. It's a state of awareness that this earthly flesh and blood body conceals something absolutely miraculous. And the illusion is that we go somewhere when we ascend. Even though I talk about travel to other star systems, ascension is really about expanding our awareness and our consciousness. And the truth is that we simply change our awareness of who we are and begin to identify with and converge with our pure self, our real self, our light body self. And this is again why Claire and I collect these images for you, so that you can begin to mirror your true self. There's a cause and effect relationship between us and these images. The images are the cause. The effect is an expansion of our awareness. And people say, well, I have limited sight. I may be blind. That's okay. Because the Tibetans, the Christians, the Egyptians all teach the same thing. These images have presence. That these beings, these avatars, be it Osiris, Horus, Christ, or others, can manifest through an image. They're busy people. So they just send an image. And through the image, because of quantum entanglement, we can communicate with them. So I love these images, like these Tibetan ones here. We see the Buddha of infinite light descending down the stairway to heaven from the Pure Land. And we've got these rainbow streamers coming down. This is the manifestation of beings coming down, or perhaps even beings going up into the Pure Land. You might get lucky and find one of these Chintamani stones over here. That's called the wish-fulfilling jewel that can instantly produce the rainbow light body. You know you got a Chintamani in your hand when you're no longer in your earthly flesh and blood body. Suddenly you've held this stone in your hand, now you're in your light body. Think about that. All kinds of people like King Solomon, Jesus, Nicholas Rurik have all sought and known the secrets of this Chintamani stone that produces this rainbow bridge into the celestial realms. And I'm a seeker, of course, of the mysteries of the Chintamani stone, and also the mysteries of this rainbow world, this pure land where they go to. Flipping back to Christianity, they call this pure land Sion, or Sion, sun. And in the book of Hebrews, which is an Essene-based text, they tell us that you have come to the heavenly Jerusalem, the celestial city that the Essenes always talked about, to the city of the living God. You have come to thousands upon thousands of angels gathered in joyful assembly. Where is Sion? Well, they tell us that it was thought to be at the center of the world and on top of Yahweh's holy mountain. It has its roots in the depths of the underworld, and its heights reached into the heights of Zaphon and stretched into the farthest heavens. That is the scope of the Essenes' consciousness. certainly well beyond the Earth, looking into the Milky Way itself and connecting through consciousness with all these other advanced civilizations. You have come to Sion, to the city of the living God. Our arrival at Sion marks our acceptance, according to the book of Hebrews, into an innumerable company of angels and just humans made perfect. Well, who are these people? And how did they get to be so perfect? Well, I've just given you in part the Essene teaching on this. Love with all your heart, your mind and soul. Love your neighbor as yourself. You're on your way to joining this immortal race of perfect light humans. When you look up the definitions of these words, just means upright, righteous, and balanced, especially balanced within their inner male and female. They're humans, which means they're a member of the species Homo sapiens. They're not animal, divine, or the key thing here is they're not machines. That'll become extremely relevant in just a moment. They're made, meaning they're shaped or formed that way. And they're perfect, meaning they're complete, fully developed, whole, holy beings. Just humans made perfect. I want to join them. Anybody else want to join them? Yeah, that's where we want to go. That's why we get together with John Van Auken and all these other wonderful teachers, because they're blazing the trail to this place. But again, it's not an Essene teaching. The Essenes were masters. You know, they lived in Alexandria, Egypt for a while, where they interacted with mystics from Iran, from Iraq, from India, from Egypt. And in Iran, they talked about the frashakareti, the refreshing of the human race. They said the sun's going to go flash, and humanity will be refreshed. See the pun on the English word and the Iranian word, frashakareti. We suddenly become in perfect light beings. And so the Essenes were drawing from all of these earthly traditions and merging them with the teachings of the angels. That's why their teaching was locked away after it was discovered in 1947. The powers that be looked at this and God said, wait a minute, this is 1947, and we're starting to translate these books in 1952. We've got Ike fighting the godless commies, and here's these commies that Jesus was hanging out with. This isn't going to fly. This is the era of Ike, and this is the era of Elvis and rock and roll. We're not ready for extraterrestrial encounters with celestial beings coming from a celestial city. Put the Dead Sea Scrolls under lock and key for 40 years until the Dead Sea Scrolls were illegally published by the University of California in 1994. It's that powerful of information. They also drew from the Buddhist streams. And as I said before, I love the Buddhist stream because the teachings are so crisp and clear and the artwork is so phenomenal. It's one of our favorite images here. This shows the descent from the Pure Land of the Amitabha Buddha, the Buddha of infinite light. And what we see here in the detail is he's the guy with the force beam coming out of his third eye. And what's happening here is you see all these celestial beings coming from other pure realms that are all converging on the earth. They're descending to the earth plane with the Buddha of infinite light, who's this golden being of light here. Again, with this beam of light coming out of his third eye. Isn't that powerful? And so what happens here is that he is descending in order to claim this little guy down here, this little lucky guy down here in this shaft of light. He's been on the receiving end of that shaft of light, and this is Avalokiteshvara, the goddess of compassion, who's got a lotus blossom in her hands. This is called a welcoming descent painting. And the purpose of it was, and get this, the Buddhists would teach that you would put this on the wall of a person who's about ready to transition into the other side. And they teach that they would put a silken cord attached to that painting. And then when the soul comes out of the body, it could grab a hold of that silken cord and travel to the Pure Land with the Buddha of infinite light through the painting. The painting is a portal. What kind of a universe do we live in when a painting becomes a portal to the Pure Land? You have to come to Nashville at the end of October for the answer. The Art and Science of Living Ascension by Claire and William Henry, where we explore detail how art is a portal to the divine realm. Crass commercial message. The answer is quantum entanglement. We're all part of a unifying force called the Big Bang. We are all entangled. And because of that, the Buddha of infinite light can transmit vibrations, knowledge, whatever to you instantaneously through this process of quantum entanglement. We are always connected with the Buddhas, with Christ, with all of these other beings. And the idea is that two entangled subatomic particles, or photons, like our bodies are composed of photons, are somehow connected by a sort of a quantum wormhole through which this information can be transmitted, or through which a soul can travel or journey back to the Pure Land. I'm going to leave you with that little tidbit, and we'll press on. I wanted to give you a little bit of background on some of this ascension material that will help you to understand exactly what is happening in our time right now. This flash, this twinkling of an eye at the last trump that will transfigure us. So for a couple of moments, just follow my journey of how I started to explore this transformational process. Let's go back to 2500 BC. This is the statue of Inanna. It was discovered in Syria in 1939. It is a statue that reflects the oldest human story. The oldest human story is the story of Inanna, this goddess's quest, or her ascension, rather, through 7 halls or holes in space until she got to the throne of her sister, Ereshkigal. Along the way, Inanna acquired and then realized she no longer needed several accoutrements, including a helmet of salvation, a rainbow necklace, a pala or miracle garment, these incredible golden serpent bracelets, and the waters of life, the Grail cup. All of these are the accoutrements of the gods. I first learned about them from Zecharia Sitchin, who thought this was some sort of an ancient astronaut getup, like Inanna was going to climb in her spaceship and soar off to the Pleiades or something. And what he kind of missed was that this is all a spiritual process that they're describing in these stories. That she probably really didn't have the helmet of salvation. It was her activated crown chakra. The rainbow necklace is her activated throat chakra. And that with the water of life, she's opened up her womb. And she's receiving these higher dimensional or higher frequency vibrations that enable her to transform. All of the Anunnaki wore this pala or miracle garment. It's what made them giants or mighty ones. And so when you look at the ancient gods, in this example here from ancient Babylon, we see this Anunnaki god in a ring of stars that is symbolic of the light body or their ascension body. The Anunnaki were also light beings that could manifest physical or earthly bodies. And the phenomena of radiance or luminosity, their light body, is a motif that's woven throughout Sumerian and Akkadian literature and art. And it's something I've been trying desperately to work more into Ancient Aliens in our storylines. Ancient Aliens is very hardware-oriented. But recently, Giorgio dropped the words light body as a possibility for what these ancient aliens actually were. So I think we're getting ready to turn the page in Ancient Aliens into looking more at the spiritual aspects of it. Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's taken us a while to establish the framework, but now we're moving in this direction. There's a magic word for you that was recently dug up by a scholar named Sean Astor. This is why a lot of your Anunnaki authors know nothing about this, or people that write about the giants, for example. That word is malamu. It's used to refer to the radiance of kings, heroes, and gods. It means radiance and splendor, and it denotes a characteristic attribute of the gods, a sparkling vital force. It's something that the Anunnaki and other deities had the ability to manipulate, that they were trying to transmit to humans. All the biblical and other radiance accounts, whether they're in Egypt, India, or elsewhere, are based on these Sumerian originals. And when we see these luminous beings like Shamash here stepping through this portal or Stargate, he's wearing his malamu, his power garment that he's intending to transmit to humans. The belief that the king was clothed in the malamu, this power garment, clearly existed from ancient times and derived from the gods or celestial beings themselves. It's something they brought here to humanity, who placed it on the king's body. And it was an awesome experience when the king suddenly manifested his light body. In fact, that was part of the early definition of what a king was. He had the ability to spiritually transform before his people. This royal robe is a transmittable teaching. It's probably not an actual physical garment. Rather, like the rainbow light body teaching, it is a method of human transfiguration into a celestial being. Inanna knew the secret, so did Tutankhamun. This is what we see on one of his chests in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, where he is wearing what Gerald Massey, the British poet and Egyptologist, called the crossed garment. I like to joke that Tutankhamun's crossed garment, that's in Nashville where I live, people go to the Church of Christ and they don't know that they're using an ancient Egyptian term for the light body of Osiris and Tutankhamun, the crossed body. It's all about this spiritual alchemy and the spiritualization of our bodies. Dr. Charles Muses was a mathematician and Egyptologist who believed that the Egyptians had developed a technology in which tones, lights, and an as-yet unidentified plant were utilized to open a rusty valve in our consciousness that would materialize into, similar to the hormones that are released in the production of the larval forms of insects when they transform into butterflies, which would allow a new form of body to emerge, a non-molecular light body. And then what the Egyptian pharaohs had the ability to do was to take their consciousness and copy it into this non-molecular light body, and off they went into the stars. This is why they mummified their physical body. So as long as their physical body remained in that tomb in the Valley of the Kings, their new non-molecular light body was able to then soar throughout the cosmos. Then if they wanted to return to Earth, they could. And so when you go to Dendera, for example, you'll see resurrected pharaohs on their Ark of the Millions of Years, holding the resurrection stick with their crown on, and also their malamu, which is their power garment. And as I've noted since 2003 or so, that Ark of the Millions of Years looks exactly like the way modern science portrays a wormhole. Ptah is the god who is responsible for teaching this to the Egyptians. This is Queen Nefertari here, who is thanking Ptah for her bright white garment of light, her afterlife non-molecular light body that now she gets to go soar throughout the cosmos within. And Ptah is the great master technologist and geneticist of the ancient Egyptian tradition. They tell us that he fashioned the human body. And in my opinion, he fashioned the body for the purpose of making it a more conducive vehicle for transfiguring into the light body. This is what I mean. We've been going back at least 5,000 years of tweaking this body so that it can more easily and effortlessly morph into our resurrection body, our rainbow light body. And we can see the clear correspondence here between Ptah and his symbolism and that of Padmasambhava. And there's even a phonetic resonance with their names. Padma, lotus-born, and Ptah. The letters D and T are interchangeable. So Padma and Ptah are basically the same name. They do the same things. They look the same way. Ptah is, as I said, the great technologist. So this resurrected Ptolemaic king that we're looking at here on the ceiling at Dendera would have Ptah to thank for his resurrection body. He'd have him to thank for his crown of wisdom, his resurrection stick, his key of life, his lotus craft, his feathered ascension throne. Gee, wait a minute. Have we seen these symbols anywhere recently? Aren't these exactly the same symbols we see in the Tibetan art with the resurrection stick, the crown of glory, the golden rays, and the lotus throne? They're exactly the same symbols with exactly the same meaning because they come from exactly the same cosmic place. We're just finding this within different cultures and piecing it all together in a way that has never been done before. And I thank you for the opportunity to present this to you. So this is how we do this, is we start matching all of these traditions up. Here's a favorite. This is from the tomb of Seti, where we see Ptah as Osiris on his throne with his resurrection stick, rainbow crown. He is suited up just like Padmasambhava. He's in his ascension suit. Claire and I have spent a lot of time on our tours in Egypt chasing around these rainbow light body beings. This one here is at Karnak. This is the Sekhmet Chapel. These are plasma beings. ultimately. When we talk about a being in their light body, they are plasma beings. Our sun is plasma. 99.9% of the universe is plasma. So these are plasma beings. And look at this guy here. Can you see the light body form here? He appears to be baptizing one of our guests in front of the statue of Sekhmet. In this example here, it's a little dark, but it looks like Sekhmet is actually stepping out of the wall. These are just extraordinary experiences that we have, and we invite you to join us. We have a tour coming up in March 2019 where we're going back for another look and another opportunity to share all this with our guests. So let's skip forward now from 2000 BC. Let's go to 800 BC, the time of Elijah. Elijah ascends into the heavens in a whirlwind, right? And as he's going, here he is in his whirlwind that looks very much like Padmasambhava in his rainbow light body again. When Elijah ascends, he is in front of a bunch of witnesses, and he goes up in his chariot of fire, or fire, as most people would say. I like chariot of fire because he's going to go far into the universe in this thing. His chariot of fire. And as he's going, he's transmitting to his priest, Elisha, his pala garment, his miracle garment. The Bible says Elijah used this garment to heal the sick, raise the dead, walk on water. Superhuman capabilities. He was a giant. He wasn't 15 feet tall, but he was a mighty man because he possessed this transmittable garment of the Anunnaki, the Malamu, that enabled him to wield the Force, Luke, and do all kinds of powerful things that you and I are seeking to do. So here's Elijah transmitting this garment. This is what the divine beings do. They seek to give this garment to us. The whole human quest is about getting a hold of this new skin, this new light body. Elijah ascends, but then he decides, I'm a compassionate guy. I haven't fulfilled my mission yet. I'm going to reincarnate. And he reincarnates as, that's right, John the Baptist. That's what Jesus said anyway. John the Baptist is the reincarnation of Elijah. So lo and behold, we have all this art of John the Baptist going out in the wilderness to get his what? His cloak. He's got to get his cloak. In San Marco in Venice, I took this picture of the angels giving it back to John. Here you go, John. Here's your cloak again. And John says, thanks, man. And he puts it on. Then he transmits it to his cousin. Who's his cousin? Jesus. Jesus. We're seeing a continuous transmission over here of a couple thousand years of divine beings appearing on the earth plane to give us this garment of light. And here's Jesus saying, yeah, I'm that Essene star child. I'm the one that's bringing these celestial mysteries to earth, and I'm going to demonstrate for you what you can ultimately do. The proof of that is the Shroud of Turin, which I believe is the authentic burial shroud or resurrection shroud of Jesus. Thank you. So he transmits the vibration to Jesus. Now Jesus has it. And we have all kinds of artwork that shows John baptizing Jesus. And the angels are always in these baptism scenes. If you pay attention to this baptism art, there's always an angel there with the cloak. And that's what it symbolizes, the Malamu, the power cloak of these divine beings. This is Da Vinci's take on it. Here's the angels down here holding the cloak. And then here's the baptism with this super cosmic vibration, this perpetual light that John is transmitting into his cousin's crown chakra. And after this, Jesus is no longer the hillbilly from Nazareth. He's the Christ. He has Christ consciousness, Christ presence, and he can walk through the streets and just beam it. That's what we all ultimately want to learn to do. Transform our planet, spiritualize it by embodying this vibration. And Jesus, as I said earlier, demonstrates this capability by taking the disciples up to the top of the mountain and transfiguring, changing form. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're supposed to be learning how to do. I'm going to show you. And, actually, some people believe that the transfiguration actually happened as part of the resurrection, that the Bible has it all out of order. I lean towards that interpretation, that the transfiguration is morphing into light is part of the ascension rather than part of the baptism. But it's clear that Jesus was transmitting something to the disciples. At the Last Supper is when it happened, when he told them to go heal the sick, raise the dead, preach the kingdom of heaven is at hand. And he transmits something called exousia to the disciples at that moment. Exousia is symbolized by a robe of light, a robe of sanctity, robe of glory, shining garment, garment of light. My favorite term for it comes from ancient Iran, where they called it the beaming garment. Because when you put it on, you're radiating light. But you also have the ability in the Star Trek vernacular to beam, which means to dematerialize your physical flesh into information, beam it to another planet or location, and rematerialize a physical flesh and blood body if you choose to. That's the normal world. This isn't the real normal world. We've been conned. We bought the lie that this thing is the real world, and this is the real world. Okay? We got to get back to the truth. And the truth is that we're powerful beings of light. And as we connect with this robe of light, we regain our authority, our jurisdiction, our liberty, our power, our right to act, our ability, privilege, capacity, and strength. Everything the Patriot Act tried to take away from us. In this reign of terror that we now live in. Sit down, shut up. Don't ask any questions. Oh, you disagree with Google and Facebook? Your history, pal. You no longer exist. It's called fascism. It's called totalitarianism. It's called terror. These are terrorists. They're terrorists. They're coming after us. That's enough of that. Sorry. The Essenes tell us this high heavenly being, Jesus, would reveal the mysteries of eternal being, concealed from humankind. That's what the Dead Sea Scrolls say. At that time, when these teachings are fully revealed, our time, I believe, the righteous will be rewarded with healing, great peace and long life and fruitfulness, together with every everlasting blessing and eternal joy and life without end, a crown of glory and a garment of majesty and unending light. That's the Essene prophecy of our time. That the planet will be spiritualized, it will become righteous once again, and all will wear the crown and the robe just as Mary did. She's having it transmitted to her by Jesus. He received it from John, who got it from Elijah, who got it from, I'm not sure where Elijah got it. Still attempting to find out. This teaching in the scrolls is referred to as the perfect way, the perfection of holiness, walking in the way of perfection, and was given to the Essenes by extraterrestrial beings, otherworldly beings, who are referred to as heavenly holy ones, holy angels of the Lord, and perfect ones, which means they're whole, holy, complete, and compassionate. These angels delivered the heavenly secret, say the scrolls, or mystery, that resulted in the transformation of their body into a supernatural substance, or celestial flesh is the term that they use. The Essenes sought this bodily and spiritual perfection in order to transform our planet into a planet of light and love, and to cross over a boundary into the celestial city, the New Jerusalem as they referred to it. And to commune with these beings, to stand united with the angels before God and live in a state of perfect light for all eternity. Does that get you excited? Me too. That's talking my language. And look at the beings that are delivering this teaching. John the Revelator described it as a being with a rainbow around his head. Hello? Hello? We're talking a rainbow light body being. And all of these scholars, thousands of them that have researched the Dead Sea Scrolls, never made that connection. And I'm thrilled to make that connection for them, because I believe that that is the ultimate way that we can see who these beings actually are, who are delivering these teachings. Some believe that rainbow angel was actually Jesus, the king of terror. And I think it's very probable that that angel of light was. But I also know that the fourth Dalai Lama also had an encounter with Avalokiteshvara in her rainbow light body that is exactly the same as that image I just showed you of John the Revelator. So once again, this has nothing to do with Christianity or Essenianity or any kind of insanity you want to subscribe to. It's a cosmic teaching. And these guys are smart. They appear in tradition after tradition to make sure that their message is repeated and is protected. So here's John the Revelator receiving the book of wisdom from the rainbow angel, and here's the fourth Dalai Lama receiving the wisdom through mind transference from Avalokiteshvara. It's the same story. It's the same imagery. In the book of Revelation, which is an Essene-themed text, John the Revelator was an Essene, we're pretty sure. He described the Holy of Holies of the celestial city he saw in his vision. Artists like Hans Memling have been trying to capture this. Here's John the Revelator here. He goes over the Rainbow Bridge of Consciousness. Now he's peering into the higher dimensional realm. There's no ayahuasca involved in this, by the way. And he sees Christ enthroned on his rainbow throne. And this is what it's about. And these stories are actually mind maps for connecting. They're ascension simulation texts, is the way I describe it. When you read Hebrews and Revelation correctly, it's a map for journeying to the celestial Sion, to the New Jerusalem. But you can find the same map in the Tibetan imagery as well, as we're making firm here. John tells us there was a throne of God. His servant stood in a place of perpetual heavenly light. The Essenes believed this light one day would bathe the entire earth. But we had to have a vehicle that was ready for that. Otherwise, it would just burn out the body, apparently. In another part of the temple, John saw the Ark of the Covenant that had been lost since 600 BC. Along with the jar of manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and the jar of anointing oil, these would return when the Messiah restored the temple. Another prophecy, very important prophecy, that the Ark of the Covenant and all its accoutrements would be recovered in the temple. The Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem will be rebuilt. Has yet to happen, but maybe soon. Christ with his resurrection stick, his crown of glory, his golden rays. Look familiar? Should. It's exactly the same as Padmasambhava with his resurrection stick and crown of glory. They're all the same type of beings that we're dealing with here. When the Son of Man comes in glory, says the prophecy, and all the angels with him. Here's the angels up here. This is Padmasambhava on his throne. All the nations will be gathered before him. We'll all be on the internet together in virtual reality glasses, provided to you by Apple and Samsung and Sony. We're going to introduce to you the fake Messiah, and then when you take the glasses off, you'll see the real thing, right? Revelation 2012. Used to love talking about this in remember 2012? It was a long time ago. Revelation 2012 is Judgment Day. Do you remember that? The book of Revelation, chapter 20, verse 12, is Judgment Day. All things. Don't tell me these people don't have a sense of humor who write this stuff, right? What happens at Judgment Day? Oh, I saw the great white throne and the one seated on it, the guy with the rainbow and the crown and the resurrection stick, and the earth and the heavens fled from his presence, and no place was found for them. Saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and there were open books, and one of them was the book of life, and the dead were judged according to the deeds. Now, thank God there is no mechanism on this planet where everything you ever think and do online is recorded and watched by Google and the CIA and the FBI and the Russian government and everybody else. Thank God we don't live in a world like that. Can you imagine? That'd be like Judgment Day, where the books, you're an open book. Some Christians believe Judgment Day, there's only going to be one opportunity. You're either going to go through it in a smoking ruin, or you're going to find the gate to heaven. And when you find the gate, you're going to find the rainbow body being. And I hope we all find the right gate. But the point is that this last judgment, final judgment, that's not a Christian concept. They got all that from the Zoroastrians. In ancient Iran, they talked about the Frasho-Kareti and the Sambataka fires at Judgment Day. It's a cyclical event, according to Zoroastrianism. Islam teaches the same thing. In fact, nearly 2 billion people on this planet share a belief in Judgment Day, that this day is looming and perhaps even imminent. On that day, the Ark of the Covenant will be found. According to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they all have a Messiah who's on his way. And that Messiah is going to get the Ark of the Covenant. Jews believe it's the Messiah. Christians believe it's Christ, the second coming. Islam believes it's the Mahdi, the 12th Imam, the hidden Imam. Islam's very interesting because they tell us that the 12th Imam has an assistant who's going to go get the Ark of the Covenant for him. Clever. That assistant is Jesus, who will get the Ark of the Covenant and then take it to Jerusalem, upon which Armageddon ensues. Because there's no way that the Jews or the Christians are going to allow any kind of Islamic figure to bring the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem. It's a classic, just unbelievable setup. But it's clear the Ark of the Covenant is on the horizon to be manifested in our world. And what exactly it is, we'll come back to that in just a moment. But just for a moment, we've got to talk about this Judgment Day thing, because I think we're living it. Remember, we talked about the Reign of Terror, the Patriot Act 2001, right? Not the Space Odyssey, but what we went through. 2003, we get a new government office called the Total Information Awareness. It's a program, the United States Information Awareness Office, that began during the 2003 fiscal year. It operated under the title from February until May 2003 before becoming the Terrorism Information Awareness. And here's their logo right here. All kinds of Illuminati, conspiracy theories circle around this thing. And basically the plan is that we're going to spy on everyone on Earth. But you can't tell people we're going to spy on everyone on Earth, so we got to come up with some new clever way to get people to hand over all their personal details, put photos up, tell us where they're going, what they're doing, who they're hanging out with, all the crap they don't need that they're buying, and all of that. So we're going to call it Facebook. We'll call it social media. Forget total information awareness. It's Facebook, social media. Oh, they'll never gladly give over all their personal details. No, people are much smarter than that. And we learned from Edward Snowden, of course, about PRISM. Nice little rainbow imagery here. Catch that, PRISM? Classified PowerPoint presentation linked by Snowden that tells us that all these guys, Google, Facebook, Yahoo, they're all collecting all this information about you. And the books were opened, and you were the books. Your life is a complete open book. If you're online at any moment, you're dealing with the Antichrist, in my opinion. I wrote this article in your face on my website, williamhenry.net. The war with the AI overlord Antichrist is on. As I wrote, your habits, your friends, your likes, your hopes, your fears, your relationships, all of it. Every message, every comment, every photo, every search, every email, every website you ever visited, every one of them. Even beyond what you remember visiting. In chronological order, collected from the moment you switched on your computer or your smartphone. They own access to your webcam, your microphone. Google knows everything you have ever done online. You don't want to call that Judgment Day? When the books are opened and your deeds are measured? In China, they now have their social credit system. If you don't behave the way they want you to, you can't get a mortgage. You can't get the fast train. You can't get the fast plane. You sit in the back of the plane. Facebook's introducing the same thing. It's already here. It's already here. Welcome to Judgment Day, folks. Listen, I tell you a mystery. We'll not all sleep. Not all of us. Some of us are going to wake up, but we will be changed in a flash, in the twinkling of an eye. I don't want to depress you, but we have to talk about something really important. We have to talk about transhumanism just for 5 minutes, okay? About how Silicon Valley has taken control of the human body, how they own our children. They've got them all addicted to these products that they believe now they can't live without. And they intend on, in a flash, in a twinkling of an eye, within the next decade, transforming the human body by creating a smart skin, replacement organs, a metabrain with chips implanted, transforming us into cyborgs, into machines, wired to the internet. If you're not a thing on the new Internet of Things that they've created, you might not be able to buy, sell, or trade. Oh, no, that sounds like the mark of the beast. We're back to the book of Revelation. And I would say you're exactly right. This is the Antichrist in motion here. And what they're going to sell you on is this, is that it's just like Jesus, or there's Satan taking Jesus up to the pinnacle of Solomon's temple and saying, all this can be yours. Silicon Valley's deal for you is, you've got a limited lifespan with that thing you're sitting in. You have legacy genes. It wears out. From 14 generations back, you're exemplifying unconscious behaviors that you don't even aren't even aware where they come from. You make random mistakes. You have a sense of humanity. You have limited intelligence. You have a single-track awareness. You're gender restricted. You're prone to environmental damages. You're corrosion by irritability, envy, greed, depression, and your elimination stinks. Why do you want one of these things? What you want is our new primo body. Humanity 2.0. Ageless, replacement genes, upgrades, error correction device, enlightened transhumanity, 100 quadrillion synapses, multiple parallel viewpoints, gender changeability. Impervious to damage, turbocharged optimism through drugs, pharmaceuticals, and you recycle and purify your waste. Oh, and by the way, if you want a job in the future, you're going to have some of this to stay competitive, right? That's where we're at right now. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is the plan. It comes from Dr. Carl Schwab. He runs the Davos Financial Gathering every year in Switzerland. They all get together to rule the world. He wrote a little book called The Fourth Industrial Revolution, saying we are on the brink of a technological revolution that will fundamentally alter the way we live, work, relate to one another. It's beyond your scope of your comprehension what we have planned for you, and what's about to unfold is he's basically saying it's going to affect everything. The first industrial revolution, he says, was used water and steam to mechanize production. The second used electric power to create mass production. The third used electronics and IT to automate production. Now we live in the fourth industrial revolution, which is building on the others. And it's characterized by a fusion of technologies that is blurring the lines between the physical, digital, and biological spheres. Boom. We are merging with machines. I thought we were supposed to be doing this. And now they want us to do this. Is it possible to reconcile these two? Yes, it is. It's another conversation. I'm just going to say, yes, it is. But how did we go from here to here? Where in the ancient world, this is the great exemplar of ascension and female power, and now all of a sudden we believe we've got to pack our skin through Apple, Google, Samsung, Sony technology and be owned by these corporations. Well, what's happening is we're moments away from what's called the singularity, when the machines that we're building become more intelligent than we are. Maybe by a little bit, maybe by billions of times. What's going to happen after the singularity? Nobody knows. Nobody knows for sure. That's what the word singularity means as well. Nobody knows what is going to happen. But we do know it is going to happen sometime in the next 20 years tops. What will happen when the machines we're building become smarter than we are? Are we ready? On August 8th, 2018, Saudi Arabia executed and crucified a Myanmar man in the holy city of Mecca in a rare form of punishment reserved for the most egregious of crimes. The same country has promised a civilization leap for humanity with a planned $500 billion new city that they're building out in the desert. It's on a stretch between Jordan and Egypt. It's run by alien intelligence, artificial intelligence. No, wait, it's alien intelligence. Oh, that's right, it's artificial intelligence. Yeah. So the government of Saudi Arabia has decided they're going to build a whole new civilization with robots and humans coexisting. This is a vision, actually, of Masayoshi's son. He's a Japanese salesman who believes the singularity is a little more than 2 decades away. He bet his fortune on it, and he got this guy here, Mohammed bin Salman, to back him. He's a Saudi prince. He's the one who's backing this new city, which they call Neom. He's in cahoots with another Saudi prince and an American prince named Jared Kushner. They all work together. And they're envisioning this new civilization where humans and robots live together. This is why in October 2017, Saudi Arabia became the first country in the world to give a robot citizenship. Robots have more rights than women in Saudi Arabia. And this is why. And as I'm looking at this and studying MBS, as he's called, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman. Well, didn't John Van Alken say something yesterday about a guy named Mabus, the Antichrist named Mabus? And he said it may be us, ha. MBS, and maybe MBS. I don't know. But they are the ones who are leading this now. MBS works with all the Silicon Valley companies, and now they're going to start introducing robots into Saudi society. And here's what they envision. Einstein had an IQ of 200. Sun and MBS envisions an imminent future where AI measured by IQ will expand to 10,000. And if you don't have the chip, you won't be able to keep up with these people. He talks about a world where humans would live with 10 billion robots with super intelligence. Sun allowed that money is not important, blah, blah, blah. We want to make everybody happy. And the way we're going to do that is by living with Chinese robots. 8 billion of them. This is the world in a flash, in a twinkling of an eye, that I think they're talking about in this prophecy of how we will be changed. Elon Musk has warned about this. It's a little too late, he says. We've already summoned the demon. Jack is out of the box. And my answer, if I were talking with Elon Musk, is that, well, isn't it time we call on the angels then? Isn't it time we bring in these higher spiritual beings to help us sort this out? Maybe AI will be part of our future. But I think we need our ascension intelligence in order to manage artificial intelligence. And there ain't nothing spiritual going on in between these ears, I can assure you. You know, this guy's smoking weed with Joe Rogan, talking about the robots, blah, blah, blah. None of these technology people are spiritual people. They're, in fact, atheists. They don't like people like us. They don't like to talk like we're talking here. They want to control humanity. They're fascists and totalitarians. Elon Musk talks about, AI, I'm not quite sure about it, but oh yeah, I've invested all my money in a Neuralink. You're going to buy my chip that's going to be your brain-computer interface. A little bit of hypocrisy there, maybe? A little bit of confusion going on? Yeah, get off the weed, Elon. His answer is, we got to get the fuck out of here. We got to get off this planet. We got to leave now. We got to go to Mars. We got to go to Mars. That's the answer. That's the answer. We got to go to Mars and do it all over again? Right? I just look at this and think, what is the matter with these people? We got to back up humanity, says Elon Musk. Well, how about getting down and really working on our problems and understanding what's going on and maybe using technology to, thank you, to save humanity? Aren't there other ways to use the hundreds of billions of dollars these stupid corporations will spend going to this dead planet Mars that will improve the lives of the other 99.999% of the humans that they're going to leave behind? Isn't there? Maybe? Come on, man. What Elon Musk doesn't realize, and what I would, again, coach him, and also David Newman, I don't mean to take shots at these people. I'm not being disrespectful here. I'd say this to his face, is that they realize the human body has to change to go into space. Even the Bible says flesh and blood can't inherit the kingdom of heaven. This body's not going into space, darling. It's just not. NASA's known this since 1962. This is when they coined the word cyborg and started turning us into machines so we can migrate into space. Well, darling, there's another way. We don't have to become machines. We can become light beings and go back to our original state of being. And no, stop covering up the lie. David Newman, she worked at MIT, really smart woman. Now she's an administrator at NASA. Why? Because she came up with this, we're going to create a new skin for humanity. We're going to put ourselves in a new skin. And this is going to allow us to migrate into space. I'm all for space migration. I realize that my whole life has been ultimately about answering the question how we can migrate into space. But this flesh and blood body isn't the way we're going to do it. We're either going as machines or light beings. And conversely, that means that the Anunnaki and all these other cats that came here a long time ago, they too probably had to subscribe to the same laws of physics we do. They were either robots or light beings. And there's evidence for both in the ancient world. So here we have this idea that we've got to build a new skin for ourselves, says Dr. David Newman, if we're going to have a fighting chance of surviving on Mars, our new home planet. Oh my God. Well, if you're going to follow through on that, please send monks to Mars. Please send monks to Mars, because they're the only ones that are going to have a fighting chance of staying there. Using our spiritual capacity to terraform Mars, to transform it, to spiritualize it. And look at the correspondence here between Padmasambhava and his rainbow light body and Deva Newman in her supersuit. Very interesting. It's ingrained within us that we got to get this new garment of light, this new super garment, right? But it's not going to be built by Google, Apple, Samsung, Sony, or any of those other atheist engineers. It's going to be built by monks and spiritual people like you and I. So two caterpillars are trapped in a spider's web. They're chatting on Facebook. The FBI's watching, the CIA, everybody else. And a beautiful butterfly flies by. One says to the other, "You'll never get me up in one of those things. You'll never get me up in one of those. You'll never get me up in one of those." But this is the choice that we have right now. Because they're coming after this body. This body is gone. In a flash, in a twinkling of an eye, we will be transfigured. Unless something intervenes. The flash. Let's talk about that flash, the river of holy fire. Just a moment. Y'all heard from Dr. Robert Schoch, brilliant man, love it. Love his message about the sun. You might have heard from the other Schoch, Wilcock, David Wilcock. Shocking information. He's been talking about a solar flash, that the sun is getting ready to zap us to a spontaneous mass rapture, ascension. I'm very curious about this, as I have been looking at this story since my 2002 book, The Healing Sun Code, where I talked about the same type of a solar flash idea. He rebranded it. And I started writing recent articles, The Rapture Nibiru Boo-Boo Flash, Fake News or a Thread We Can Use. Is this really something we have to worry about, this solar flash idea? Ascension fire, the solar flash and the return of Christ. These are 3,000-word articles. You can read them on my website, williamhenry.net. So I won't go into a lot of detail about this flashy thing here. The solar flash and the Ark of the Covenant. We're going to talk about that as we continue here. But I take this very seriously, that our sun clearly is some kind of an activator. In the epic poem, the Mahabharata, we learn about the Sambhadaka fire and the Frashakareti, this cyclic event, this flash that suddenly transforms the human race and wipes off the surface of the planet. Is this fiction? Is it prophecy? Is this something that's about to happen? Is there anything we can do about it? When Christ talks about baptizing you with the Holy Spirit and fire, or rather John the Baptist is talking here, and he says, "Hey, you don't want to worry about me. There's one more powerful than I that's coming. And I'm not even worthy to carry this guy's sandals. And he is going to baptize you with the Holy Spirit and fire." And people point to that and say, well, what is that fire exactly? And then we come over here to the book of Daniel. We learn about a river of fire flowing, coming out from his presence. Thousands upon thousands attended upon him. Myriads upon myriads stood before him. The court was convened and the books were opened. And this is how Christian art portrays this. This is a judgment day scenario. This end time scenario. Here's Christ enthroned on his rainbow throne, and here are these fires coming off of his throne. It's very similar, this stream, as to what you read about in the book of Enoch, which says, "From underneath the mighty throne, the rivers of flaming fire issued. To look upon it was impossible. One great in glory sat upon it, whose robe was brighter than the sun and whiter than snow. No angel was capable of penetrating to view the face of him, the glorious and the effulgent, nor could any mortal behold him. A fire was flaming around him." And so Christian artists have tried to get a hold of this idea of, what do you mean there's a flame coming from the throne of Christ? What are you talking about? Where is that throne? What is this that we're dealing with here? And so in the detail here, you see Christ enthroned in his in the rainbow ring, which is symbolic of the rainbow light body. And we see this fire coming off his body. And we see the righteous who are ascending towards that throne. Now, on the opposite side, you've got everybody else down here in the trash heap being incinerated. Right? These are the fires of hell, and this is the Middle Ages again. You're either going to go through the gate of heaven or the gate of hell. And this is what Dr. Schock, this is what Wilcock and others are saying. This is our present reality. We're about to get zapped by a flash that will produce exactly the same effect that they're describing in the book of Revelation. This is why I think the throne with the flame coming off it is the sun. Look at the correspondence of the art with the flames coming off the throne with a coronal mass ejection. The throne, remember, is called Sion. Sion, same place. Wondering if it is possible that it is. If what they're talking about in these end-time pieces of art and this prophecy is the throne of Christ up here, there's some kind of a fire coming off of it, and intermediate between the celestial throne and earth, there's this symbol that they start putting in here that's guarded by these seraphim angels. What is that? And what is its role in this scenario here? And is it once again possible that this fire we see coming off the throne is the sun releasing the solar flash, the Samvadika fire, the fire of Holy Spirit that can either uplift or destroy? Inri. That was the name of Christ put above the cross of crucifixion. It's supposed to mean Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. What an idiot. The guy calls himself the King of the Jews. This is Pilate speaking. Of course I'm going to crucify the dumbass, right? Come on, man. But esoterically, they know that Inri means by fire, frequency, or vibration, humanity is made perfect or more whole, alluding to Christ as a bringer of holy fire. A holy fire that will transform us. And that is what they're portraying in this artwork here, is the holy fire. And what if it is a flash from the sun, a coronal mass ejection that suddenly alters everything? FEMA is preparing for a solar superstorm that would take down the AI, the alien intelligence grid. Bring it on, say some people. That's our salvation. Yeah. Please, blast us back to 1865. Save us from Google, Apple, Samsung, and Sony, and the other anti-Christian and anti-atheist idiots that want to transform our bodies into machines. Oh, but William, you got to calm down because you also know these technology people. I have a friend I've known since the 1990s. He built a technology company with 300 employees. And then last year we had the eclipse that came through Nashville, and he rented out the Parthenon. He sat me down at lunch. He said, I got to tell you, man, I never told you this back in the 90s, but I was channeling the sun. And I got this much of Microsoft's code in my channeling, and I built a company with 300 employees, and I cashed out for $500 million. I'm like, really? I wondered how you did that, right? And then he says, you know, the sun told me that it wants us to become transhumans. I'm like, really? Really? And I'm just going, okay. I know a lot of the coders, a lot of ayahuasca influence on coding. There's a lot of, seriously, there's a lot of cosmic elements in AI. Maybe we have to turn ourselves into machines to survive such a solar cataclysm. We're not going to go bury ourselves underground. We're going to turn ourselves into machines with a new skin that would be capable of handling it. Maybe that's the way it's supposed to be. I'm not subscribing to it, but I'm offering it to you as a possibility, an honest possibility. Here's another example. Judgment Day, second coming. Christ is in his bubble of light up here, in his bright white garment of light. Here's the Samvadika fire, the holy fire coming off the throne, maybe a CME. There's these two guys down here, and there's that symbol again. What in the world is that thing? Well, it took me about a year and a half of seeking. I finally found out what that thing is. There it is. It is called the Edamachia. It is the throne of Christ, the throne of the second coming that will be assembled by his brother in preparation for the return of Christ. Here it is at San Marco. The Edamachia appears in all this second coming art. Walk through this with me. At the bottom of the scene here, you've got Mary and a gathering of Essene initiates with the angels. Then in the middle, you've got Christ in his Merkabah throne, ascending in his bubble of light, his Merkabah throne chariot lifted up by angels, some kind of a portal or a gateway in his light body garment. Then up above, there is that symbol, the Edamatia, the throne of Christ. Did you know Christ had a throne? And that it will be recovered at the time of the second coming and reassembled? I didn't until a few years ago either. In Christian end-time art, it's composed of a cross, which is viewed as an instrument of transmutation, converting flesh or mass into light, spirit, or energy. A spear that pierced the side of Christ, a sponge, a scroll or a book, which is thought of as the book of life or the book of love, a robe of light, and a jar containing sacred oil. Wait a minute. I have just listed off all of the components of the Ark of the Covenant. Remember we talked about how earlier it was lost at the time of King Nebuchadnezzar and Josiah, and it was returned as this stupid little golden box, and nobody talked about all the other little things that were supposed to be in there. The cross, the jar of anointing oil, the tablets. Well, here they are coming back together, and they're calling this thing the throne of Christ. Here's the Ark of the Covenant opened. Here's the rod of Aaron. That's the cross thingy. Here's the tablets. Here's the book. Here's the jar of anointing oil. All we're missing is the robe of light. But, oh, that's right. The Israelite high priest who operates the Ark of the Covenant is wearing the robe of light. So all of these are part of this prophecy of a device that is going to be recovered. And the thing is that we're told that this device actually produces what is referred to as a pillar of righteousness, a pillar upon which the righteous souls ascend into the celestial realms. John the Revelator saw this thing in the celestial throne as he identified it in the book of Revelation. And here's a photo I took of it in St. Paul behind the walls in Rome, where we've got the two angels on either side of the ark with the robe of light, the robe of stars. That's our light body garment we've just spent the past hour talking about. Here's the cross. Here's the other assembled pieces of this device. This device. What is this thing? What does it do? Does it just open portals or gateways for the Israelite high priest, or does it have some other mysterious function that we're not aware of? And because it is shown in close proximity to the sun, is it possible that maybe it has something to do with these fires? Is this could it be like some kind of a free energy device, for example, that would assist us? Maybe it's something that can help us transmute the Samvartika fires, the solar flash. Maybe we can develop this technology that would help us to somehow withstand these solar radiation that would normally wipe clean the planet. These are just some possibilities that go through my mind as I'm looking at this imagery. But it's clear that it is Christ's property. It is his throne. And this is why it's shown in close proximity to his throne in the second coming imagery, why we've got the angels beside the open gateway and so forth. This device is not on earth, according to this imagery and these traditions. It's somewhere in the celestial realms awaiting a time when maybe the angels bring it back, maybe somebody dreams it up. Maybe somebody has a dream and they learn how to actually make this thing once again. Maybe it's an apported device. Maybe someone goes into a mystic trance and transfers it from some other dimension into the earth plane. Something like that. We're just speculating here on what is possible. Here we are in Torcello in Italy. This is an 8th century representation. You see the tiered cosmos here with Christ up on his throne. There's the fully assembled Ark of the Covenant right there, the Edamatia, throne of the second coming that will be brought to earth. I think that the way this works is that Christ is like one of these super fast moving celestial beings, and the Ark of the Covenant is sort of like an anchor through which he can be manifested. At least that's consistent with the descriptions of the ark in operation in the Holy of Holies of Solomon's temple. We do know that our sun does release these fires periodically. In fact, every 8 minutes or so, portals open and we get high energy cosmic particles from the sun reaching down to the earth. And isn't it strange that these snake-like portals, or this is the way NASA portrays them as these sort of snake-like portals, are very similar to what we see in the art of the second coming, where we have these shoots, if you will, or snake-like filaments coming off the throne. Is Christ some kind of a solar being like Buddha? You know, he came from the solar clan, the children of the sun. Are we talking about some manifestation of a cosmic being that suddenly wakes everybody up, that is seen simultaneously? Mary was called a woman clothed with the sun, suggesting that she too is some kind of a solar being, or perhaps might even come through the sun. The reason I'm going through all this to you is that I want to just point it to you that we have to begin to expanding our consciousness. We've got to begin to tap into what so many of us refer to as Christ consciousness. And a place I want to take you that affirms this to us and the role of this device in developing our Christ consciousness is here. This is San Marco in Venice, Italy. And you see this fabulous domes in San Marco. And up on one of these domes, you see a circle of Essene initiates. And as we come in closer here in the detail, we see that they've got flames coming out of the top of their head. I call them the flame heads, because these Essene initiates all were clearly awakened beings. They had higher consciousness awakened, and they have beams of light. Can I have 5 minutes? Whoops, sorry. I just need 5 minutes if I could, Tim. I'm about to wrap up here. We're headed home. Whoops, sorry. I just blew that. Pardon me. Can you see these beams that are coming out of the top of their head? And there's 12 of them here. The 12 disciples, the 12 Essene initiates, they're all unified by this symbol, because they knew that the original symbol of Christ was not a cross, it was the fully assembled Ark of the Covenant, which is his Adamastia throne, the prepared throne of the second coming, which means there must be a consciousness component to this device, to this symbol. Otherwise, why are they portraying them in this fairly early Christian depiction of the disciples, these Essene initiates, all linked by this device and experiencing some kind of a transference of cosmic energy from this device? It's obviously assisting them. And as I look at this, I'm thinking maybe it's possible, and here we are in Greece now, seeing Mary and Jesus on the throne here on the bottom, and up at the top, the Essene initiates all sitting on thrones, all connected to the same device. This device meaning a tool, appliance, sign, or symbol, and obviously receiving some kind of cosmic vibration from it. It's assisting them in some manner. And I believe that recovering this device could be imperative for us in order to save ourselves from a possible solar catastrophe. That's what I'm asking you to consider. So what could that thing possibly be? Well, what I'm going to present to you is what I think is one possible manifestation of this device that we're talking about. And here in the detail, we see the Essene initiates receiving these little sperm-like guys that are coming off of this throne of the Adamastia. They're in sync with the Adamastia throne and receiving something from it. Back to our original image, Earth from space. This is the first Discover Epic image released by NASA, showing the full sunlit Earth from nearly 1 million miles away, centered on the Americas. No big deal, right? We're all so used to seeing our Earth from space now that it doesn't even faze us, right? It's a normal thing. Back in 1969, when they first took the first image of the blue marble, our planet from space, it was revelatory. And the astronauts used to ooh and ah about our planet from space. They'd have Christmas Day readings of the book of Genesis from Apollo 8 and talking about how powerful it is to see our home planet from space. Now we're so jaded, this doesn't even excite us, right? But the reason I'm showing this to you is because this image comes from Discover, from the Deep Space Climate Observatory. And symbolically, we have the sun with a coronal mass ejection, possibly. We have a device in between the sun and Earth. That matches what we saw in the image of the second coming, with Christ in the sun, with the device in between the Earth and sun. Well, actually, Discover is none other than the reincarnation of the lost satellite program Triana, better known as GORSAT. It was born one night in February 1998 when then Vice President Al Gore bolted out of bed with a vision providing a clearer view of our world, as he would describe it a few weeks later when he announced the idea during a speech at MIT. He challenged NASA to send a satellite to the L1 Lagrange point, a spot 1 million miles from Earth in the direction of the sun, where the two bodies' gravitational pulls are in equilibrium. Once there, Triana would create a digital age version of Apollo 17's iconic blue marble photograph by beaming back a continuous real-time view of Earth's sunlit side. This sight would, Gore hoped, heighten consciousness of the planet's environmental fragility and encourage contemplation of how global warming could gravely affect it. A dream? Gore has a dream about putting a satellite in between Earth and the sun so that we can see our planet from afar. If this were an episode of Ancient Aliens, I would tell you that ancient aliens came to him in this dream and said, build this device that would help everybody wake the bleep up, okay? So that we can start seeing our planet for what it really is, this living cosmic being. And to remember its fragility. See, here's the correspondence between the Second Coming image with the Ark of the Covenant. And I'm not saying the satellite is the Ark of the Covenant, but I'm saying that it is symbolically very similar to this diagram. And I'm pointing this as an example of a device that is intended to expand our consciousness. Here's Gorsad's image of the far side of the moon in between the Earth and the sun. David Sarita just put this up on Facebook today. Did you know that just a couple weeks ago, something blotted out the sun? Yeah. NASA's SDO cameras were blocked out for a period of over 1 hour and 14 minutes. Maybe Al Gore had something there. What if we put a camera out here in space and monitor our Earth? What if something is getting ready to come in? And he has very cleverly positioned a device that would enable everybody to see something so miraculous, so terrifying, so magnificent, that it completely changes humanity forever. I'm going to leave you with that image. I thank you all very much for having the opportunity to present this. God bless you all. Thank you. Thank you so much.
A big round of applause for one of my favorite people in the world, William Henry. William does have his book outside. His website is
www.williamhenry.net.
williamhenry.net. Another round of applause for this amazing man.
Thank you, everybody. Very kind. Thank you. Thank you, Tim, so much. Pleasure. Blessings.
Komm, der Tochter aus der